Hi everyone, welcome back to the Book Bakht channel. I'm Bakhtawar, a Pakistani booktuber, and I wanted to make this video for college and undergraduate students who I know are taking classes from home and they're being told to read by their teachers, but the argument is not always successful. So I thought I'd lend a hand, well, as much as I can anyway. So this video is also for people who haven't really done any real reading before and kind of confused where to start and need a bit of a push in the right direction. So I'm going to start my argument with a story. I usually start these sort of videos with a story. So it's about Socrates and his pupil Plato. Some accounts say that it was a different student, but anyway, so it's a true-ish narrative of what happened. Socrates and Plato were walking, they were walking together past, I think, a stream or something. And Plato says to Socrates, "I desire all the knowledge that you have." And Socrates listens to him and everything, but then out of nowhere he grabs Plato's head and sort of dunks it underwater and then keeps it there for a dangerously long time. And then when he finally resurfaces, he says to him, "What did you want the most when you were down there?" He said, obviously air. He said, when you desire and need knowledge the way that you needed air, then come back to me." So the moral is sort of that, just like, with books and with life, knowledge is accumulative and it takes a long time and it's kind of, you require a lot of patience. I think the problem with sort of our generation is that we want everything at once and we don't want to necessarily work for it. And then the means that we are using to acquire the knowledge is actually just rubbish information from social media or whatever. It's, a dishonest means because, we're not reading classical texts, we're not reading, the work of intellectuals. So it can be said, it reminds me of that speech from the dictator. We've developed speed, but we've shut ourselves in. So we've obtained speed and information, but we don't have any intellect. And Jordan B. Peterson, I'm sure you've heard of him. He's on YouTube, he's this rock star intellectual, and he said that the way reading affects your mind is very different from external stimuli such as visual aids or movies or audios. He said that reading creates and activates an entirely different set of neural pathways and a larger set, because when you're reading you're having to use your imagination a lot and construct a picture which doesn't really exist, as opposed to just being given a ready-made picture in the form of a visual aid. So, and also reading is also the most powerful form of neurobics, way to keep your mind young and kind of functional, for a long time. So I feel that in this golden age of content, we have more access to information than ever before, and yet we're the least knowledgeable that we've ever been, even if you consider our parents' generation. And I think that it's part of, because, we're absorbing rubbish information and social media all the time, and we're not giving a lot of emphasis to original thought. Let me give you an example. I'm sure all of us have watched horror movies and action movies, and after you've watched a certain number of them, I think that each time you need it to be more terrifying in order to feel this sort of hit. So it's almost like a drug. You need more of it each time to kind of to achieve the same effect. But if you look at Gothic literature, Dracula and Frankenstein and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, they didn't have movies back then, but they could still, the literature itself was powerful enough to send a chill down your spine. I think lots of people that read these books now, they find them, well, obviously there is a considerable language barrier, because a lot of words are not used anymore, but even so, you have to see that at that time, the people's imagination was to the point where they could sort of recreate these images out of nothing, while we can only respond to them in this generation. My biggest tip, if you're looking to start reading, but often you get really confused, I get really confused with Bookstagram posts, and I've been reading from a very young age, so I don't know why people they exclude others that way and they make it so confusing. And part of the reason that I started this channel was to sort of simplify a lot of things and to give as much information as possible in short videos. So my biggest tip, if you're looking to start reading, is don't listen to what anybody is saying. Think about what you like intrinsically. What defines you, your personality? Are you interested in history, philosophy, historical fiction? Are you interested in, supernatural things, horror things, gothic things? Are you interested in plain, sort of chick lit or kind of romance, things like that? So kind of really define to yourself what interests you and then read what you consider are popular works in that genre. Of course, if you're completely unsure, although most people do have a sense of it, if you're completely unsure, of course you can experiment, but really go for, often when I read history, I get fixated on a certain personality, and then I'll kind of just read books about that, and then I'll read nothing around that. So that sort of happens as well. Lots of ignorant people that I meet in my life, they say that, bookish knowledge isn't useful, it's experience. But, I would argue that even to make sense of experience, to derive any kind of meaning from it, you would need to have a certain level of intellect, which reading gives you. So even navigating, the mazes of experience is kind of difficult without kind of that underlying bookish knowledge, if you will. Books also give you they give you an empathy and insight into, people that you meet every day. I remember when I was young, I read Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, and there was this one character who was supposedly a villain but also not at the same time. But anyway, he had a certain lisp and a kind of way that he walked, and then I remember that I saw somebody in my real life who kind of really resembled, and I'm like, means that person, there's something wrong with him, he's got a chip on his shoulder. So you develop a sixth sense about these things. And people that don't read, they seem to have a kind of myopia, because if you read even a small amount of the great works of literature, of the last centuries at least, you will find that great men really do think alike, and you'll find that different people, without any similarity racially or culturally or geographically, they'll be coming to the same conclusions, because human nature really is universal, and that's one thing that you realize. So people that don't read, they seem to have a very narrow view and a very myopic view of things, because they've not lived in the shoes of others, So yeah, that's all, folks. I have tons of recommendations on my channel. Please please give them a watch if you have the time, and consider subscribing, and please comment if you have any questions, and please recommend the channel to friends and family if you think anyone would enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.